Go. Okay, Mr. Kirby.
Alma, can you call the roll, please, and make sure we have a quorum?
Yes, sir. Member Shattuck? Member Liebig?
Here.
Member Worth?
Present.
Member Moffitt?
Here.
Member Kuhart?
Here, but Elizabeth Sparkman just as well.
Oh, okay. Member Sparkman?
Here.
Member Hoffman? And Chairperson Kirby.
Here. The alternate
And you
John
have-
Hopkins is here.
Yes. Mr. Hopkins, you're an alternate to
Yeah.
Mr. Worth, so.
Mhm.
And you have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Could you read the meeting and public comment announcement, Alma?
Yes, sir. In compliance with the directives of the county, state, and Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, this meeting is live streamed and closed to in-person public participation. Temporary procedures are subject to change pursuant to guidelines related to social distancing and minimizing person-to-person contact. To make a verbal comment at today's meeting, dial 916-875-2500 and follow the prompts to be placed in queue for a specific agenda item or off-agenda matter. When the chair opens public comment for a specific agenda item or off-agenda matter, callers will be transferred from the queue into the meeting to make a verbal comment. Written comments are always accepted. Send your email comment to boardclerk@saccounty.net. Your comment will be routed to the board and filed in the record. And that concludes my announcement.
Thank you, Alma. So I guess we can go ahead and observe the Pledge of Allegiance.
Would you like to assign that to one person so that we're not all trying to say it at the same time?
Why don't you go ahead and start it, Alma?
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic from which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good. I just wanted to thank everyone for making the time to get on today. I know Zoom meetings is in everybody's wheelhouse these days, and probably everybody has a lot of them. So just appreciate you getting on, and we'll try to get things rolling and get done before too long. So Alma, could you please read item 1?
Yes, sir. Item number 1 is adoption of the 2021 annual meeting calendar.
Are there any public comments in regards to that?
Hold on a minute. Just let me check really quick. I don't see any public comments for item number 1.
Okay. Kim, do you want to talk anything about the setup?
Yes, I do actually. The one date that I wanted to discuss was the December date. It would have fallen on December 23rd, which would have been Christmas Eve. So I put a placeholder on the 22nd, but what I would like to recommend is that that meeting be held on, or scheduled for Thursday the 16th at the same time, 2 p.m., and we'll put that on the calendar. That date works a little bit better for everybody and also keeps that Christmas week clear. So if that's acceptable to folks, then that would be made as part of the motion to adopt the calendar.
Okay. I would think that would be a good idea to have it the week before rather than the week of. So do we need a motion to accept the calendar as you suggest?
Yes.
Okay.
Worth moves to approve.
Lindsay, so moved.
So I heard it first by Member Worth.
Worth?
Second, Lindsay.
Thank you. Member Shattuck?
Aye.
Member Liebig?
Aye.
Member Worth?
Aye.
Member Moffitt? She's on mute. Member Moffitt? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Member Sparkman,
Yes.
Member Hoffman, and Chairperson Kirby.
Yes, thank you.
And the motion passes with those members present, modifying the adoption of the calendar for December, changing the meeting to December 16th at 2 p.m.
Thank you. And now, Alma, could we move on to item 2, and could you read that, please?
Item 2 is the minor amendment to the South Sacramento Habitat Conservation Plan regarding conservation easement holders.
Are there any public comments in regards to that item?
We do not have any commenters signed up to speak for that item.
Okay. Kim, do you want to give us a little background on this?
Yes, I would. So the Habitat Conservation Plan does provide for minor modifications that do not adversely affect the impact assessments or the conservation strategy. In this case, a minor modification is proposed to allow for different entities to hold conservation easements. And this was really always the intention, at least in recent years, and that has been confirmed by the wildlife agencies. Both U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and California Department of Fish and Wildlife are in support of this revision. This revision would allow for entities such as the Sacramento Valley Conservancy or the California Rangeland Trust to hold these conservation easements for preserved lands under the agencies. And so we just made some, and I provided an attachment that shows some pretty simple changes to this conservation easement language to allow for other qualified entities, and they would need to be approved, to hold these easements. There was also a little bit of revision to the description of the sample conservation easements that are in Appendix D to more accurately describe what is actually in Appendix D. And so, again, we think this was always the intention. I've actually spoken with folks that were involved early on in the plan, and I think the general consensus is this is some leftover language that was never changed. So I'm open to answer any questions anyone has about this.
I had a few.
Any comments?
This is Worth. I had a few. The first question is, would there be any change in the ongoing management and monitoring? The JPA and the implementation agency would be responsible for doing that, or does that fall to the easement holder?
Well, that's decided on a case-by-case basis for each property, who's going to do the management and monitoring. But it typically has been somebody different than the easement holder. So this is just related to the easement holder. It doesn't change any provision related to who would manage and monitor the properties.
Okay. And then there are occasions where you have a fee title purchase that also has a conservation easement associated with it.
Yes.
And it would be anticipated then that only a third party would hold the conservation easement and the JPA would hold the title?
Correct.
Okay.
That provision would not change. And in fact, if what the plan currently says is that lands owned in fee title by the agency the easement would be held by California Department of Fish and Wildlife or U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and they have indicated that is really not their preference to be holding these easements. That would be an exception. They would prefer to see Sac Valley Conservancy, depending on the property, California Rangeland Trust, some other accredited person to actually hold the easement.
So in that circumstance where they held the easement and somebody else, presumably the JPA, held the fee title, who would be responsible for management and monitoring?
The agency would be responsible for that. Now,
J-
they might contract that out, but the agency as the landowner would be responsible for that.
And the easement holder will only be responsible for making sure the agency did their job.
Yeah, the easement holder is responsible to making sure that everything is in adherence with the terms of the easement.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Any other questions?
This is Member Moffat. I'm willing to make a motion that we approve the minor amendment.
Seconded by Worth.
Been moved and seconded. Could we have the clerk call the roll, please, for the vote?
Member Shattuck?
Aye, sorry about that.
That's okay. Member Liebig?
Aye.
Member Worth?
Aye.
Member Moffat?
Yes.
Member Sparkman?
Yes.
Member Hoffman? And Chairperson Kirby?
Yes.
And the motion carries to approve the amendment.
Okay, thank you. And now, Alma, could you read item 3, please?
Item 3 is the review and recommend approval of the Mahan Ranch proposed preserve for the Grant Line project in the city of Rancho Cordova.
Thank you. Are there any public comments in regards to this item?
Currently, there are no public comments.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or Kim, maybe you want to talk a little bit about this? And
yes, I'll give a brief description, and there's been some changes since I did the staff report, so I should probably walk through those. This is a 540-acre proposed preserve. It would be an easement, conservation easement, and it would be a dedication as part of the Grant Line 220 project in the city of Rancho Cordova. This property is located, let's see, it's kind of north of Clay Station Road, a little bit east of Dillard Road. There's quite a few maps in here, but it is in a sort of remote location, so it's a little bit hard to describe. Hopefully you can look at the maps and get an idea. It's directly north of an existing preserve, and there's also some other preserves that are sort of to the south and the west of this. So it provides some really good continuity and connectivity with regards to a preserve. The preserve is located within the Cosumnes Rancho Seco Core Vernal Pool Recovery Area, and it protects a fairly high density of vernal pools and other aquatic resources. One thing that before I say anything further is that there has been a slight modification to the preserve boundary. There's a strip at the bottom of the proposed preserve that they're taking off. It's about 12 acres. And just for the record, I want to describe how that affects the numbers, and this will just take a minute. So the proposed preserve is described in this report with 552 acres. That's going to be reduced to about 540 acres. The swales are basically the same, 1.8, it's actually 1.85 now as opposed to 1.87. A slight reduction in vernal pools from 6.46 acres to 6.23 acres. A slight reduction in the open water from 1.78 to 1.45 acres. Streams, creeks remain the same. Valley grasslands is the biggest reduction. It goes from 526 acres to 515 acres, and then the mine tailing area remains the same. So I just wanted to walk through that, the minor modification to that preserve boundary. The preserve would be a minor preserve, as it is between 250 to 800 acres. It is located within the Upper Cosumnes watershed, and inclusion into the preserve system further protects this watershed. The staff report goes into some detail on how this preserve meets the conservation strategy principles, and it kind of walks through that. We have done a site visit, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and California Department of Fish and Wildlife, as well as the Army Corps of Engineers, have all been out and walked this site and felt like it was a suitable site for an HCP preserve. So we're looking to move forward with this process and take it forward to the JPA board for their consideration. And with that, I'll just be prepared to answer any questions. We also have some folks on the line that could also assist if there's any technical questions that need to be answered that I might not be able to.
Are there any questions in regards to this review?
I had
This is Alton.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead, John.
I had a couple of questions. I know John Hopkins had a couple of questions too. When was the site survey? What time of year? I don't recall seeing the date looking through the literature.
Taranay, are you available to answer that question?
Yeah, it was March of last year.
Okay, so it was a good time of year to go. Okay.
Yeah.
I might have further questions, but not
No
right
problem.
this second.
Okay, this is Alternate Hopkins. I have a couple of items. Firstly, for these proposals, at least in the future, it would be very helpful to have some biological information of the site that is being developed. For example, I assume that preparing the EIR for the site that's being developed included a survey for presence of different vulnerable species. It would be really helpful to have that information. I know we only have modeled habitat for this site, but it would help us to know what we're losing. And then secondly, when you looked at lots of the photographs, thanks very much, ECORP, they were very helpful, including the badger den, that was great. But in quite a few photographs, there's just really long, dry thatch of the valley grasslands. And it's going to be really important here and in other preserves that have valley grassland to have a real active grazing program to include the habitat condition. From my viewpoint, a lot of this habitat is in pretty bad shape, the upland habitat, not the vulnerables. And we need to be, it would be great, Kim, to talk to you separately from this meeting about what we can do to improve habitat quality.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to talk to you.
And that's all I have.
Any other questions?
I had an additional question. The designation of this as a minor preserve brought up a general question in how we handle the building of preserves. So this eventually potentially could be part of a much larger preserve as preserves grow out and encompass it.
Yeah.
Is that something that's presented and considered when determining the value of a purchase? And is it likely this will be part of a larger preserve in the future?
Well, I think given the location and the proximity of the preserves nearby and the proximity of the other preserves that are already in existence, I think it's likely that this could be part of a larger preserve. Yes, or it will eventually form a larger preserve. And we definitely are taking that into consideration.
It strikes me that it's worth mentioning just in general.
Okay. I think,
I mean, as we attempt to build these things, we have aspirations for particular areas to build out much larger, and it's nice to know that this is potentially a piece of a puzzle rather than a one-off.
Well, I think if you look at where the other preserves are, I mean, I think that's probably in the realm of possibility.
Yeah, I would agree.
Close by.
I would agree.
So,
Yeah, I definitely
I
agree.
think that's why this parcel was probably one of the reasons it was probably looked at as being a good candidate.
No, I agree. I was just imagining, well, what if it was all alone by itself?
Yeah.
And if it was, I mean,
that would definitely be a factor that we would consider, and this one is not. And so we did think this was a very good site for a.
No, I understand that, but I guess what I'm suggesting is that even if it were all by itself, we have to build these preserves starting somewhere.
Sure.
So
I understand what you're saying, John. Yeah, it could be. Yeah, what's the surrounding land, and yeah, there could be a potential to create a connected system, even if it's not existing at the present time.
Right.
Yeah.
Kim, who's a likely person that will be holding or managing the preserve or holding an easement on this? Has that even been discussed?
We haven't discussed that at this point in time. The two, we've been talking on other preserves. We've been talking with Sac Valley Conservancy and California Rangeland Trust.
Right.
So we would have to work on that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, I would move that we recommend approval of the Man Ranch as a proposed preserve.
Okay. Is there a second?
Member Shattuck will second.
It's been moved and seconded. Alma, can you take the roll call, please? Or if there's any other comments first, I guess we should find out. Anybody else has any other comments about it?
It was
There
fine.
aren't any.
The technical folks approved it already too.
Yeah. If not, then Alma, could you have the roll call, please?
Alma, you're on mute.
I'm sorry. There are no verbal and written public comments for this item either.
Okay. Can we have the roll call then?
Yes. Member Shattuck?
Aye.
Member Liebig?
Aye.
Member Worth?
Aye.
Member Moffitt?
Yes.
Member Sparkman?
Yes.
Member Hoffman? And Member Kirby?
Yes.
And the motion passes. Item number 4 is the comments from the members.
Anybody have any comments they want to put forth?
I had a question. Did the JPA approve Elk Grove having their participating special entity status for the HCP for the sports arena area?
Yes, they did.
Okay, good. I thought I saw that in a previous email, but couldn't remember.
And also, I just wanted to add that Executive Director Kim Hudson, there is no item on the agenda, and I will add it to the next agenda for an Executive Director report. So if you would like to add any comments at this time, it might be, if you have any.
I didn't prepare anything.
I did.
One thing that I am working on that you should be aware of is I'm working on the annual report that's due, and that's going to provide a lot of information about all the activities to date, the finances. We're producing a lot of maps for that report. So I will be bringing that back to you soon. We are finalizing we're finalizing 3 pieces right now that are that have been in the process for a long time. We're finalizing the first part of the Van Vleck acquisition. We are also finalizing the Rooney 2 acquisition for the establishment project, and they're in the final phases of being approved by the interagency review team on that part of it. That's kind of a two-part process. So we'll have our first reestablishment project underway very soon, and we are also getting ready to finalize an additional purchase at Gill Ranch that has also we've been working on for a long time. So there's a lot going on in the HCP world right now. Very exciting.
Okay, thank you, Kim. Any questions for Kim about any of those things?
This is Member Shattuck. I have a question for Kim, but it's not about one of those things. It's really just to touch bases for an update on how the coordinated permitting is working, especially the state permits, but also the other coordinated permitting.
I think it's going fairly well. We've been not sure. So as far as extending coverage, under the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and CDFW ITPs, I think that's all fine. I also understand that the 401 process with the regional boards is going very well, and the 404, because most projects, fall under the permit, that's working fairly well as well. I think there's a couple of pieces that are not actually under the HCP. They have to be done separately. And so there's some, work that has to be done to make sure those processes go smoothly. But there's still a requirement to do the 106, which is the cultural resources part. And also the stream bed alteration agreements. But CDFW has said that if the project is consistent with the HCP, they have been streamlining those stream bed alteration permits, and that appears to be going very well from what I understand. But since I don't generally work as a permittee, I'm not working on these individual projects all the time. But I think things are going fairly well, especially for a program that's, pretty new. I think it's going pretty well.
Good to hear.
Thank you, Kim.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody else have any other comments or issues or anything that we ought to be discussing at this time? Hearing none. Alma, is there any public comments?
There are no off-agenda public comments.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I guess if there's no other items for discussion or questions, we can adjourn the meeting.
I've been thinking about why the video conference meetings go so much faster. What I've determined is it takes a lot of time to physically get out to a meeting, and one would feel guilty traveling so much for a half-hour meeting. So if you're on computer, it's very simple. I like the general tendency of efficiency of these meetings, and when we return to in-person meetings, I think we should maintain that efficiency, despite the fact that
I don't disagree with that. But that's a good take on it. But thank you again for everyone attending, and Kim and Alma, thank you for putting everything together. And
Yeah, thanks, everybody.
Good to see everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Get your
Thank
vaccine.
you.
Stay safe.
Bye now.